The message reached him at exactly 12:01 a.m., just 1 minute into a day that would either turn him into one of the richest people on earth or erase every chance he had of ever escaping the life he'd spent years trying to outrun. The screen lit up in the darkness of his tiny apartment with 6 words that made no sense at first. You have 24 hours. Don't waste them. Before he could even laugh at what looked like another scam, a second message arrived. A bank balance, $1, a timer, 23 hours, 59 minutes and counting. Then his phone rang from a private number. Listen carefully. The calm voice said, "By tomorrow at midnight, you must legally own assets worth $1 billion. Not borrow them, not steal them, own them. If you succeed, everything becomes yours forever. If you fail, every opportunity connected to this offer disappears forever, and nobody will ever believe this call happened." The line went dead. He stared at the phone, waiting for someone to yell that it was a prank. Nobody did. Outside, rain hammered against the window as thunder rolled across the city skyline, making the apartment feel even smaller. His name was Ethan Brooks, 29 years old, buried under student loans, working 2 jobs, sleeping 4 hours a night, and wondering how life had slipped so far away from every dream he'd once had. Billionaire? He couldn't even pay next month's rent. He tossed the phone onto the couch, convinced someone was playing games with him, until another notification appeared. A digital wallet had been created in his name. Inside was a single encrypted file. When he opened it, dozens of legal documents appeared, each carrying his name, official government verification, and instructions that somehow passed every authenticity check he knew. Hidden among the papers was one sentence highlighted in red. "The first key is already waiting. Find the woman wearing the blue coat before sunrise." Ethan's heartbeat sped up. How could anyone know where he was? How did they prepare documents using information that wasn't public? He rushed to his laptop, checking databases, searching the company names listed inside the files. They all existed. Every signature was real. Every registration number matched. Whoever created this wasn't pretending. They had access to systems ordinary people couldn't even see. He looked at the timer again. 23 hours and 47 minutes remained. Curiosity defeated fear. 10 minutes later, he was speeding through empty streets in an old sedan that shook every time it crossed a pothole. The rain blurred the windshield while streetlights reflected across flooded roads like rivers of gold. According to the coordinates hidden inside the file, the woman would be standing alone at an abandoned train station before dawn. By the time Ethan arrived, fog covered the platform so heavily that every shadow looked like someone watching him. The station had been closed for years, yet one light still flickered above the entrance. He stepped inside, his shoes echoing across cracked concrete. At the far end of the platform stood a woman in a blue coat, holding a black umbrella despite standing under a roof. She never looked surprised to see him. "You're late," she said quietly. Ethan frowned. "You know who I am?" She smiled without warmth. "Not yet, but you will." Before he could ask another question, she handed him a small metal key in an envelope sealed with black wax. "Everything depends on whether you choose to open that now or exactly 1 hour from this moment." "Why?" Ethan asked. "Because every billionaire you've ever heard about understood one thing." She leaned closer until he could hear her breathing over the rain. "The first decision is always made before you know enough to make it." Then she walked away into the fog and disappeared as if the station had swallowed her whole. Ethan chased after her, but every exit was empty. No footsteps, no car, nothing, only silence. He looked at the envelope. Open now or wait 1 hour. The timer on his phone kept running. Every second felt expensive. Finally, unable to resist, he broke the seal. Inside was a photograph of a storage facility and a handwritten sentence. "Congratulations, you already failed the first test." His stomach dropped. Beneath the note lay another card. Fortunately, curiosity was expected. On the back was the address of the storage unit and a code. When Ethan reached the facility, the manager was somehow expecting him. Without asking for identification, he handed over the keys. "Been waiting years for someone to claim this," the old man muttered. Years? Ethan had never been there before. He rolled open the steel door and froze. The room wasn't filled with cash or gold. Instead, there was a simple wooden table, an old laptop, several locked briefcases, and a framed photograph of a group of strangers standing beside a private jet. One face had been scratched out completely. The laptop turned on by itself. A video began playing. An elderly man with silver hair looked directly into the camera. "If you're watching this, it means you're exactly where I hoped you'd be." Ethan's hands trembled. "My name doesn't matter anymore," the man continued. 24 years ago, I accepted the same challenge you're facing today. I completed it, but I broke the only rule that truly mattered." The screen suddenly glitched with heavy static before returning. The man's expression had changed from confident to terrified. "They're listening now. You don't have much time. Everything you've been told about becoming rich is a distraction. Money follows ownership. Ownership follows information. But information—" He stopped speaking and looked towards something behind the camera. His eyes widened with genuine fear. "No, they're already here." The video ended instantly. Ethan rushed to replay it, but the file had deleted itself. At that exact moment, every light inside the storage building went dark. Complete silence filled the air. Then footsteps echoed slowly from somewhere outside the unit. One pair, then another, then 5 more. Someone had surrounded the building. His phone vibrated again. A new message appeared across the screen. "Run! They know you opened the laptop." The first crash came from the far end of the hallway, metal slamming against metal so hard the entire storage building seemed to shake. Ethan's instincts took over before his mind could catch up. He grabbed the nearest briefcase, shoved the small metal key into his pocket, and sprinted through the back exit just as the lights flickered on again. Rain exploded across the parking lot, turning the asphalt into a mirror of flashing security lights. Behind him, dark figures poured into the storage unit he had just left. They moved with military precision, speaking through earpieces, never raising their voices. Whoever they weren't police, and they weren't thieves looking for money. They were looking for him. Ethan ducked between rows of storage buildings, breathing so hard his chest burned. His phone buzzed once more. "Do not go home! They are already there!" He stopped dead. How could anyone know where he was every second? Before he could think, another message appeared. "White delivery van, 30 seconds." He looked toward the entrance just as an old white van rolled slowly through the gate. The passenger door swung open. "Get in if you want to stay alive," a woman's voice shouted. Ethan hesitated. Every instinct screamed that this could be another trap. Behind him, flashlights swept across the rows. The footsteps were getting closer. 20 seconds. 15. He made the decision and jumped inside. The van sped away before the door was even closed. The driver was the same woman in the blue coat. She never took her eyes off the road. "You shouldn't have watched the whole video," she said calmly. Ethan stared at her. "Who are you? Who are they? What is happening?" She remained silent for several seconds before answering. "The challenge isn't about making $1 billion. It's about proving you're worthy of controlling one." Ethan laughed in disbelief. "You expect me to believe this?" She finally looked at him. "No. I expect you to survive long enough to understand it." The city blurred past the windows as dawn slowly painted the sky with pale orange light. Traffic began filling the streets, yet Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that every car around them was watching. The woman handed him a tablet. On the screen was a live countdown. 21 hours and 11 minutes remained. Below it was a growing list of names: CEOs, investors, politicians, scientists. Some were billionaires, others were unknown. Every few seconds another name disappeared from the list. "What is this?" Ethan whispered. "The other contestants." His blood ran cold. "Contestants? You thought you were the only one?" she asked. Every few years, people from around the world receive the same opportunity. Different backgrounds, different countries, same rules. By tomorrow night, only one will succeed. Ethan looked closer. There had been 40 names. Now only 33 remained. "What happens to the others?" She didn't answer. That silence was more terrifying than any explanation. The van entered an underground parking garage beneath an abandoned financial building. Inside, the woman led Ethan through empty hallways until they reached a massive conference room overlooking the city. Dust covered the floor, but one wall was filled with enormous digital screens displaying global stock markets, satellite images, shipping routes, private companies, real estate transactions, and financial data updating every second. It looked less like an office and more like the control center of an invisible empire. "This place belonged to the last winner," the woman said. Ethan slowly walked toward the windows. "Then where is he now?" She hesitated. "Dead." Before Ethan could respond, the briefcase he had grabbed suddenly began beeping. They both looked down. A small red light blinked faster and faster. "Throw it!" she yelled. Ethan hurled it across the room just as it exploded, not with fire, but with thousands of tiny tracking devices that scattered across the floor like metallic insects. Within seconds, every screen in the room flashed red. Unauthorized location detected. Security breach. "Move!" she shouted. They raced through emergency stairs as alarms echoed throughout the building. Outside, black SUVs screeched to a stop from every direction. Men in tactical gear poured out, sealing every exit. Ethan and the woman escaped into a crowded morning market where hundreds of people unknowingly became moving cover. Fruit vendors shouted prices while children laughed, completely unaware that a deadly chase was unfolding just meters away. Ethan glanced back. The tactical team didn't stop searching. They simply disappeared into the crowd, blending in like ordinary shoppers. That frightened him even more. "Who are these people?" he asked. The woman answered quietly, "A private organization older than most governments. They don't create billionaires, they protect the people who already control the world." Ethan struggled to process the words. "You're saying the richest people on Earth know exactly how wealth moves before anyone else does?" She stopped beside a newspaper stand and picked up today's front page. A smiling billionaire had just announced the largest corporate acquisition in history. She showed Ethan the article, then pointed at the timestamp. "That deal was decided 6 months ago. The public only learned today." Ethan suddenly understood. Information wasn't just power, it was time. Whoever knew the future first could own it, before anyone else even realized it existed. The woman smiled faintly. "Now you're beginning to see the game." Just then, Ethan's phone rang again. "Private number." Against her warning, he answered. The familiar calm voice returned. "Congratulations, Ethan. You survived the first elimination." His throat tightened. "Who are you?" "Someone who once had 24 hours just like you." The voice paused. "Your next opportunity is worth exactly $1 billion, but only if you are willing to destroy a man who trusts you." Ethan frowned. "I don't even know any billionaires." "You will in 30 minutes." The call ended. Seconds later, a luxury helicopter descended onto the rooftop of the tallest building across the street. The spinning blades scattered newspapers into the air. A black limousine pulled up beside them. The rear window lowered, revealing an elderly man in an immaculate suit. His eyes locked onto Ethan's with unsettling certainty. He smiled as though greeting an old friend. Then he spoke just 4 words that made the woman beside Ethan turn completely pale. "I've been expecting you." The limousine door opened before Ethan could react, and the elderly man waited without the slightest hint of impatience, as though he already knew the choice Ethan would make. People hurried along the sidewalk around them, completely unaware that one decision could redirect the course of global wealth. The woman in the blue coat grabbed Ethan's arm. "If you get into that car, there's no going back." Ethan looked at the countdown on his phone. Less than 20 hours remained. Standing still was no longer an option. He took a slow breath, stepped forward, and climbed inside. The door shut with a heavy click, sealing him away from the noise of the city. The man smiled. "Good. Curiosity has always been your greatest strength and your greatest weakness." The limousine pulled away, surrounded by 2 identical escort vehicles. Ethan noticed that every window was opaque. He couldn't even tell where they were going. "Who are you?" he asked. The old man adjusted his cufflinks before answering. "Names have a habit of becoming liabilities, but years ago, people called me Victor." His calm voice carried the confidence of someone who had never been told no. "I accepted the challenge 40 years ago. Unlike the man in the video, I didn't break the rules. I rewrote them." Ethan's heart skipped a beat. "Then you're the one behind all of this?" Victor chuckled. "No, I'm simply one of the people who survived long enough to understand it." He slid a thin folder across the seat. Inside were photographs of companies Ethan recognized immediately. Technology giants, pharmaceutical firms, energy corporations, shipping networks. Every company influenced billions of lives. Red strings connected them through ownership charts that stretched across dozens of pages. The deeper Ethan looked, the more impossible it became. The same hidden investment partnerships appeared again and again behind nearly every major corporation. Different names, different countries, the same invisible owners. The world believes billionaires compete, Victor said softly. In reality, the smartest ones cooperate long before the public notices. Ethan looked up. Why show me this? Victor's smile disappeared. Because your final opportunity depends on whether you can think beyond money. The limousine entered a private airfield where a sleek business jet was already waiting. No security checks, no passports, no delays. The crew greeted Victor by name and welcomed Ethan as if he had been expected for years. Within minutes, the aircraft climbed into bright blue skies. Ethan looked out the window as the city shrank beneath the clouds. It felt unreal. Less than 12 hours earlier, he had been worrying about overdue bills. Now he was flying on a private jet with a man who seemed connected to the most powerful financial network on Earth. Victor placed a small wooden box on the table between them. Open it. Inside rested a single fountain pen, a sealed contract, and a plain black card with no logo. Sign the contract, Victor said, and before the day ends, you will legally own assets valued at more than $1 billion. Ethan stared at him in disbelief. Just like that? Nothing is ever just like that. Victor folded his hands. Read the final page. Ethan turned to the end of the document. His pulse accelerated. One sentence stood alone. In exchange for ownership, the participant permanently surrenders the right to reveal the existence of the network or interfere with its future selections. Ethan frowned. So I'd have to stay silent forever? Silence is the price of influence. Ethan closed the folder. What if I refuse? Victor looked almost disappointed. Then you'll return to your old life, assuming you survived long enough to get there. Before Ethan could respond, the aircraft suddenly lurched violently. Warning alarms echoed through the cabin. One engine lost power. Oxygen masks dropped from the ceiling. The pilot shouted over the intercom that they had suffered catastrophic damage. Through the window, Ethan saw another aircraft approaching fast from behind. It wasn't a passenger jet. It was smaller, faster, and flying dangerously close. Victor didn't panic, he simply looked at Ethan. They're early. Seconds later, the second aircraft released something that wasn't a missile, but an electromagnetic pulse device. Every screen inside the cabin went black. The jet plunged through thick clouds, shaking so violently that luggage burst from overhead compartments. One of the pilots yelled that they had lost nearly every electronic system. The aircraft was becoming a glider. Ethan grabbed the table to keep from being thrown across the cabin. Victor calmly picked up the wooden box, removed the pen, and placed it into Ethan's hand. If we crash, he said quietly, the decision dies with us. Ethan looked at the contract, then back at the rapidly falling altitude displayed on the emergency backup gauge. Less than 3,000 feet. Forest stretched below. Instead of an airport, there was nowhere safe to land. His hands shook. Everything he had ever wanted lay one signature away. But he finally understood the real challenge. It had never been about becoming rich in a single day. It had been about discovering what someone was willing to trade for unimaginable wealth. He thought about the sleepless nights, the unpaid bills, the dreams he had almost abandoned. Then he remembered the terrified man in the video, the contestants whose names had disappeared, and the woman who had risked her life to keep him alive. Victor leaned forward one last time. Choose. Ethan uncapped the pen, and instead of signing, he tore the contract cleanly in half. The cabin fell silent. Victor stared at the torn pages for several seconds before slowly smiling. A genuine smile unlike any Ethan had seen before. Finally, he whispered, someone understood. At that exact moment, the warning alarms stopped. The engines roared back to life. The cockpit door opened and the captain calmly announced that all systems had been restored and they would land safely in 7 minutes. Ethan looked out the window in shock. The second aircraft was gone. The emergency had vanished as if it had never happened. Victor nodded toward the shredded contract scattered across the floor. That was the final test. Ethan blinked. What? Anyone can become wealthy by chasing money. Very few can walk away from unlimited wealth when they realize the cost is their freedom. Victor stood as the aircraft began its descent. You didn't become a billionaire because you accepted the offer. He smiled one last time. You became one because you proved you couldn't be bought. When the jet landed, a legal team was already waiting. Instead of another contract, they handed Ethan a certificate transferring ownership of a diversified portfolio of companies, infrastructure assets, and long-term investments whose combined value exceeded $1 billion, without any oath of silence, without hidden conditions, and without surrendering his future. Victor disappeared before Ethan could thank him, leaving behind only the black card. On the back, a single handwritten sentence explained everything that had haunted him for the past 24 hours. The greatest fortune is never given to the person who wants wealth the most. It belongs to the person who still knows what is worth more than $1 billion. As Ethan walked into the sunrise, the countdown on his phone reached 0 and quietly vanished forever.